What is the best fuel for human beings? How long have we been on the planet? We've been on the planet a long time. And if you look at the authorities regarding nutrition, it seems to change every 6 months. Fat has always been hailed as public enemy #1, but in the last year, 6 months, Time magazine, Catalyst show there are a lot of messages coming through now that fat is actually not the enemy, it's a very important part of the body. So what I'd like to do, rather than being another voice in the maze of voices that says this is what you should eat, this is what you should not eat, I'm actually going to come at it from an acid-alkaline balance. What is acid-alkaline? Acid-alkaline balance is called the pH scale. pH means potential hydrogen because when you dissolve acid in a solution, it gives off hydrogen ions. So when you test how acid something is, you're testing how many hydrogen ions are in it. So let's have a look at the pH scale. Up the acid end, you've got 0. Up the alkaline end, you've got 14. And in the middle, you've got neutral, which is neither acid or alkaline. It's 7. Blood has a reading on the pH scale. Blood's reading on the pH scale is between 7.35 and 7.4. All blood will be within that range because if blood pH goes up to 8, then the person will go into a coma and die of alkalosis. And if blood pH drops down to 7.22, that person will go into a coma and die of acidosis. So we have not got much variation there. And you don't have to worry about the pH of your blood because there are 2 organs that are constantly balancing it, monitoring it, keeping it within this range. One is your lungs. When you go on a walk in the morning and you come to a big hill, by the time you're getting up that hill, you're starting to breathe deeply. And the reason you're breathing deeply is that your muscle cells are burning off more oxygen, more glucose, giving off carbon dioxide, maybe a little lactic acid. The blood pH is starting to drop. So the brain cells' lungs start breathing deeply. We need more oxygen. And every time you breathe in, you're taking in oxygen, and every exhalation, you're breathing out the carbon dioxide. It is in that way that the lungs help with the balance, the pH balance of the blood. The other organ is the kidneys. Let me show you how the kidneys do it, because it's quite fascinating the way the kidneys do it. Here is the little filtering unit. It's called a Bowman's capsule. It's in the nephron. And these are the tubules that weave around, taking the filtrate away. And then it's taken down to the bladder, where it is urinated out. The blood comes in, and the blood weaves around the little filtering units. And when it weaves around the filtering units, that's where it is filtered. But when it comes out of the filtering unit, then it weaves around the tubules. And it is in this area that the pH of the blood is balanced. Let's say the pH of the blood is getting too acid. Then it is here in this reabsorption area that the pH is balanced by the blood dropping extra acid into the tubules to be urinated out. Let's say the pH of the blood is getting too alkaline. Then it is here that extra acid is pulled out of the tubules and back into the blood. So you can see that your kidneys are not only filtering your blood, your kidneys play a vital role in balancing not only the pH of our blood, but also sodium and water levels in the body. They are also balancing blood pressure. Out of this little filtering unit, 180 litres is filtered every day. 180 litres of filtrate. In a 24-hour period, 1,800 litres of blood are filtered. But we only urinate out 1.5 litres. So there's approximately 160 litres that is reabsorbed back into the blood. And it is there that pH is balanced. It is there that sodium and water is balanced. And it is there that blood pressure is balanced. So your kidneys not only filter your blood, they also play a very important role in maintaining balance, called homeostasis. So your lungs and your kidneys are constantly at work, constantly balancing the pH of your blood. pH of your blood cannot change, as you can see, but the pH of the cell can change. The pH of the cell should be approximately 6.5. This is slightly acid, and there is a reason for that. The most acidic substance is sulfuric acid, and sulfuric acid travels at the speed of light. The most alkaline mineral is calcium, and on the scale of speed, calcium doesn't even move. Have you ever had a swimming pool? Every day you test the pH of your water? Because if the pH in the swimming pool goes too acid, then the little pipes start to corrode. If the pH of the swimming pool goes too alkaline, then algae starts growing on the pipes. The hydroponic gardener is constantly testing the pH of the water that the roots of the plants are sitting in, because if the pH of the water goes too acid, the little roots burn. If the pH of the water goes too alkaline, then they don't get the speed of uptake of minerals out of the water and into the plant because of this speed connection. Let's go to the cell. We're going through the 20-step pathway, then into the 8-step pathway. The glucose comes in. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chemical reactions before the energy comes out. Every single one of those little chemical reactions is pH dependent. So if the pH at the cellular level is going to alkaline, all these chemical reactions, and basically there are millions while we stand or sit here, they're going too slow. If the pH at the cellular level goes too acid, then they're going too fast. The body runs according to precision balance, and ensuring that the cell pH is as it should be helps the body to function as it should. pH of the blood cannot change, but the pH of the cell can change. It should be 6.5, slightly acid to get the speed of uptake of minerals. In a 5.5 cellular pH, this is where cancer thrives, and this is where fungus thrives. And in our first lecture, we looked at the link between fungus and disease. Where does Coca-Cola sit? Coca-Cola sits way up here. It's a killer at 2.6. And I think you'll agree with me, the most fantastic advertising campaign that's ever been embarked on is surrounding Coca-Cola. And you know why? Because it's got nothing else. Nothing else. It's a killer. So you can see by my illustration here how important the pH is. Again, pH of blood cannot change, but the pH of cell can change. I don't know about you, but some of my friends break every law every day. They're not breathing fresh air, they're not having any sunshine, they're living on the no list that we looked at because they're so tired, they take those quick stimulants, going to bed too late, no time for exercise, no time for nourishing food, just quickly take in those refines. Water, many people don't like water. They say, I would rather drink juice, I would rather have tea or coffee. Stressed out, such a stressful society today. When all of the 8 laws of health are broken, it creates an acid environment. Lungs and kidneys are struggling, but they're just managing to keep it so. And then the person has a can of Coke or a cup of coffee with a couple of teaspoons of sugar. Already the lungs and kidneys were struggling. Blood pH starts to drop, 7.34, 7.33, alarm bells go off. The last resort buffer system is called on. Calcium is pulled out of its biggest storage house, which is the bones. It's pulled out in an unnatural form because it was a crisis. It comes into the blood in a form of calcium phosphate. It immediately neutralizes the rising acidity of the blood. 7.33, 7.34, 7.35. We're safe, but at a cost. We now have free calcium crystals floating through the blood. What's the body going to do with that? It settles it in our joints as arthritis, gout. It settles it on our bones as bone spurs. It settles in our kidneys, contributing to kidney stones, settling in our gallbladder, contributing to gallstones, building up on our arteries, contributing to atherosclerosis. You've heard of all of these conditions. They are all illustrations of Newton's third law of motion, that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. The body is reacting in an attempt to keep us balanced and alive, at a cost. But what probably affects the pH more than anything is the food that we eat. So I'd like to show you now foods that have an acid effect on the body and foods that have an alkaline effect. Alkaline. The most alkaline forming food you can put into your body is the lemon. And you might say, no, the lemon is acid. It is. And it's acid where it should be. There's only one part of our body that should be acid, and that is stomach. It must be acid, because only in an acid environment can those little protein bonds all be broken up. If someone says, I have a very acid stomach, my question is, how do you know? I can feel it. The problem's not acidity. The problem is maybe you're dehydrated and you don't have that nice thick mucosa lining. Some might say, well, it comes up. That's not the problem with the acid. The problem is the gate, the cardiac sphincter. If it's strong and shut, no acid will come up. Can you see why the detective hat has to be put on to find out why these things are so? No, lemon is acid where it should be, in the stomach. Every salad dressing we serve at our health retreat contains lemon. It's a digestive aid. But when the lemon gets absorbed, well, it gets broken down first to glucose and fructose, then gets absorbed into the blood, taken straight to the liver, the project manager, and the project manager, the liver, he converts the fructose to glucose. Then the glucose is in the blood and sent to the cell, where it goes through the 20-step pathway, then into the little powerhouse, often called the furnace, because the glucose from the lemon with oxygen is being burnt here to give us energy. All matter on planet Earth, when it is burnt, leaves an ash. And the food that we eat is no exception. So lemon is acid where it should be, in our stomach, but when it is burnt at the cellular level, it leaves an alkaline ash. What determines the difference? It is the mineral composition of the plant. So these foods here are high in the alkaline minerals, which is calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and iron. They are the 5 main alkaline minerals. And these foods that I'm going to write up here are high in the alkaline minerals. Whereas on the acid side, the foods on this list are high in the acid minerals, or the acid-forming minerals, which is chlorine and sulfur and phosphorus. Can you see when foods are grown in superphosphate soil, even foods that are commonly or usually alkaline can start to go to the acid side because of the high phosphorus? The second most alkaline forming food you can eat is dark green leafy vegetables. They're very alkalizing. This also explains why on day 1 at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, when our guests are on their first day of juicing, we serve green barley 3 times. A lot of waste is starting to come out of their body. All body waste is acid. So the only 2 parts of our body that should be acid is stomach and the waste that's coming out. This explains why green smoothies are becoming popular, why wheatgrass, spirulina, green barleys, or barley greens, Also kale, we didn't even know what kale was 20 years ago. Even 10 years ago, it's become a very popular green. The greens are very alkalizing and they're very high in the alkaline minerals. Vegetables. Vegetables are also alkalizing, but there is an exception in the vegetables, and that is the nightshade group of vegetables. For some people, these have an acid effect. For some people, they have an alkaline effect. So we put a question mark there, because for some, they are acid, but for some, they have an alkaline effect. That's the tomato, the capsicum. These are the nightshade group of vegetables, eggplant, and what the Fijians call the white man's potato. This is not the sweet potato, this is what we often also call it is the Irish potato. The sweet potato is not a potato, it is a yam. These have a question mark because for some people they have an acid effect and for some people they have an alkaline effect. What determines the difference? It appears to be that if a person has an inflammatory condition in their body, this nightshade group of vegetable can increase that inflammation. So specifically, we're talking about, and what's affected the most is arthritis. I've seen many people conquer their arthritis by going off the nightshades, implementing the 8 laws of health. It's not forever. It's just for a period of time. One lady said to me, Barbara, all my swollen joints have gone back to normal. This lady's in her late 60s. She said, I have no more pain. How nice. We had a lady do our program. She was 43. She said, I have rheumatoid arthritis. She said, my joints were very inflamed. My doctor put me on some fairly heavy anti-inflammatories and cortisone drugs. She said, little by little by little, I eased off them. Because she said, I found that if I had, excuse me, early nights, lots of water, I was eating right, I wasn't having the stimulants, I found that I could conquer my arthritis. But she said every now and then I'd be travelling and I wouldn't be eating as well. She said, then I would go back on my medication just for a little bit. And then when I conquered again, I could get off it. But she said, I don't tell my specialist because he won't see me unless I'm on my medication. So she said, I visit him and I smile and I nod and I get the next script. But she said, I never use it. Well, she said, hardly ever. After doing our program and hearing what I'm telling you now, she was so excited. She said, I believe that I will be able to manage my crises now without the medication, but what I have learned here. That's good news, isn't it? I love the story of this lady because it was a story of a lady who took control of her health. I feel sorry for doctors, naturopaths, nutritionists, because so many people come to them and they give over their health. That's why we should be the doctor. Your specialist, your doctor, your naturopath are your advisors. There are some excellent nutritionists, but not so good ones. There are some excellent plumbers, excellent builders, but some not so good. You can take that into every profession. That's why you have to search your way. And if someone gives you advice, especially in the professional area, and it doesn't work with you, you're the boss. You're the one that's living in this body. Many have found that when they stop the nightshade group of vegetables, their arthritis starts to go away. How nice. I never thought such a thing was possible when I was young. You see, my mother died when she was 51 from rheumatoid arthritis. I was only 25 at the time. But I now know it can be conquered, and it can be conquered naturally. It's not forever, it's just until it's conquered. One lady said, I can eat raw tomato and not cooked. Another lady said, well, I can eat the cooked and not the raw. One lady said, I can eat raw capsicum but not cooked. Another lady said, I can eat the cooked and not the raw. One said, I can eat the red and not the green. Another said, I can eat the green and not the red. I love these stories because they're stories of people doing this to their body. We are the doctor. If the body says, go for it, do it. My body says to me, don't even put capsicum anywhere near your mouth. So I don't. You've got to listen to this body. My husband has 5 times the potatoes I have. That's why you're the doctor here. One day I might be able to eat capsicum. What happens when I eat it? It repeats on me all afternoon and my energy is just zapped. So I listen to my body. When you cook tomato with oil, and I think you'll agree with me, the nicest oil to cook tomatoes with is olive oil. When you put these two together, lycopene's released. You see, lycopene is from the vitamin A family, which is a fat-soluble vitamin. Lycopene is not available in the raw tomato. It's not even available in the tomato that's cooked unless it is cooked with a fat. You see, all raw is extreme and all cooked is extreme. Because raw will deliver what cooked won't, and cooked will deliver what raw won't. I myself aim for about a 50-50. 50 cooked, 50 raw. Because of the different things that are released in the different states. So that's why I put a question mark. If you love this food, if it sits well with you, if you don't have arthritis, well, you get a tick. And if you do have arthritis and you do love that food, as one lady said to me, I love this food. I said, how much do you love your arthritis? It's not forever. It's just until you conquer it. Have you ever seen the hydrangea plant? It's this huge big green bush and it has flowers like this all over it, and each flower has lots of little flowers. Sometimes you'll see a hydrangea and the flowers are all pink. Sometimes they're all magenta, and another hydrangea plant has purple flowers, and another hydrangea plant has blue flowers. They're not different types of hydrangea plant. The gardener plays with the soil pH, because at different pHs, different colours come out on the plant. And just as the gardener plays with the soil pH to get different coloured flowers out of his different hydrangea plants, we can play with the pH of our soil, our cell, and get different health conditions out of our body. Interesting to note that the gardener aims for a soil pH very similar to the cell pH. The gardener aims for a soil pH of 6.4. So vegetables have an alkaline effect. For some, this has an acid effect, and for some, they have an alkaline effect. Fruit. Fruit also has a question mark. Let me explain. If a person has a yeast presence in their body and they eat a high fruit diet, the sugar in the fruit will feed the yeast. And as the yeast feeds on the sugar in the fruit, it gives off acetic acid. It gives off lactic acid, it gives off uric acid, and it gives off alcohol. So as you can see, yeast feathers its nest. So the more sugar the yeast gets, the more waste is produced, the more acid the environment. Yeast feathers its nest. It creates the very environment of 5.5 that it thrives in. So if someone has a yeast presence in their body, my suggestion is to greatly reduce the fruit for a period of time. In our first lecture, I showed you the link between cancer and fungus. If someone comes here wanting help to conquer their cancer, my suggestion is to stop all fruit for at least 6 weeks. In one of the books that I quoted the other day, Dr. Holland, he says when you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. And that's why fruit has a question mark. One lady said, Barbara, but fruit is good. I said, fruit is excellent. But if a person has a yeast presence in their body, they need to greatly reduce it just for a period of time. Remember, you're playing with the pH of your cell to create certain conditions. Millet is an alkaline grain. Quinoa is also an alkaline grain. Buckwheat is an alkaline grain. And amaranth is an alkaline grain. Most people aren't familiar with amaranth. If you see this grain, it looks almost like grains of sand. It is so tiny. And when you cook it, it comes out like a lump of glug. So I suggest people have 3/4 millet with maybe 1/4 amaranth, or even half-half's quite nice. 2 other grains, spelt and kamut. Let me give you the wheat story at this point. The original wheat, the wheat that God made, was called inkhorn. And that wheat had a very fragile structure. And the structure that I'm referring to is the gluten or the protein structure. It was very fragile. Fragility is important. Fragile means that when it's ground, it's broken up. When it's cooked, it's broken up. When you chew it, it's further broken up. Your digestive enzymes further broken up, and it's easily absorbed and utilised by the body. It is not sure when, but at some point, Inkhorn did a wild hybrid or a natural field hybrid of a wild grass, and that produced emmer wheat. And emmer wheat is slightly more complex than the original one, but still quite a fragile structure. And because of the starvation crisis in the 1950s in Mexico, Africa and India, a group of scientists in Mexico hybridized wheat. They did that to produce a plant that had a high yield of grain, and they did. Now originally wheat always grew this high, and so when it produced a higher yield, the stalk bent and they lost their harvest. So they went back to the drawing board and they came up with a wheat plant that only grew this high. It has a nice thick stem. It continues to have that high yield. And this is the hybridized wheat that we know today. Dr. Norman Bulag got a Nobel Prize for his hybridized wheat. It saved the lives of apparently millions because it has such a high yield of grain. In fact, one farmer said he gets 10-fold more grain out of 1 acre with this new hybridized wheat than any other wheat grain. Amazing. And we don't complain about that. But what was never addressed was the effect of this hybridized wheat on the gut of human beings. In my last lecture, I showed you how it certainly has changed the starch structure, but I want to show you how it's changed the gluten structure. This hybridized wheat has an incredibly complex gluten or protein structure. Very complex, and it's almost only a cast iron gut that can break that down. In my last lecture, I showed you the stomach and I showed you how many people aren't treating the stomach right. I also earlier showed you the lining of the gastrointestinal tract and how the microbes are responsible for breakdown, absorption and protection. So we've got a loss at that level. We've got a loss of hydrochloric acid in combination with this hybridized wheat. So what's happening is partially digested glutens are coming into the blood. They're not known, they're seen as an enemy, and so more white blood cells are produced to try and deal with this, and then all the allergies start to come. If that wheat is made into a sourdough bread, the sourdough bread is a cultured bread and it directly breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain. So it comes up with certainly a less complex protein structure, but still not as fragile as these. You can still get a wild or field hybrid of this emmer wheat, and it's called spelt. And the structure of spelt is this structure that was in the emmer wheat. Quite a fragile structure. And if that spelt bread, or that spelt flour, I should say, is made into a sourdough bread, it can bring it way back to the original Inkhorn wheat with its very fragile structure. If someone is celiac, they can't even handle spelt But if someone is gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive, they can usually handle the spelt. I have met people who cannot handle spelt, but they can eat the spelt sourdough bread. And this is why, because it brings it back to a more fragile structure. So it is this hybridized wheat here that you will find in every bread, in every cereal, in every pasta, in every cake, in every biscuit. It's everywhere, because it was in the 1970s that this hybridized wheat went worldwide. So in Australia, this hybridized wheat became well established probably by the 90s. If you go out Western Australia today, all the wheat is only this high. And you can see why the farmers love it, because they get more grain, thus more money, and one can understand that. But you can see what was never addressed is the effect of this hybridized wheat on the gastrointestinal tract and even the whole body of human beings. Let me show you another aspect of this. Here's the lining of the gastrointestinal tract, and here is the gut flora, as I showed you the other day, that covers the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. And do you remember I showed you how it's responsible for the breakdown, the absorption and the protection? And when a person's had antibiotics, the contraceptive pill, cortisones, etc., many things, you start to get a compromise or a dying off of this gut flora. And the other day I showed you how this gut flora nourishes these cells. So here we have a happy cell, here we have an unhappy cell that lines the gastrointestinal tract. When this hybridized wheat goes through the guts of human beings, it breaks down to a substance called glutamorphine. Morphine is an opiate derivative. I'll give you that's a representation of glutamorphine. If glutamorphine comes here to this part, say a healthy gut, that cell there has the ability to knock off glutamorphine. It has the ability to knock off the morphine part of this breakdown. And so what gets into the blood is just gluto. Now, if glutamorphine comes to this section, this sad cell here, because it has no nourishment from gut flora, it cannot knock off the morphine aspect. And so glutamorphine gets into the blood. It gets taken to the brain, and the opiate receptors on the brain pick it up. This explains why it is well documented in many research papers that when an autistic child is taken off all wheat and all dairy, they get a 50% improvement in their autism. What's the dairy? Well, when it's broken down, it breaks down to casomorphine. And exactly the same thing happens. If you've got healthy cells, they can knock off the morphine. If you've got unhealthy cells not being nourished by the gut flora, they cannot knock off the morphine. And Dr. Andrew Wakefield, in his book Callous Disregard, he showed very, very clearly, his team of pathologists proved again and again that autistic children, their guts are not working well. So can you see we've got a few things happening here? What we've got is the hybridized wheat. What we've got is compromised gut flora. But what we've also got is Aussies are overdoing wheat. Let's have a look at how many of this carbohydrate list is wheat. Wheat, 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 wheat. The majority of that list is from the wheat. Aussies are just overdoing wheat. How many people do you know have cereal and toast for breakfast, pasta for tea, sandwiches for lunch, cakes, biscuit through the day? That's almost 100% wheat. Yes, we've looked at the dangers of the high carb, but there is a carb in there that is more dangerous than any other, and it is the wheat. In my last lecture, I showed you the danger of the starch in the wheat. Now I'm showing you the danger of the gluten or the protein in the wheat. But we've got another problem. And that problem is that children are being fed food too young. The first teeth that children get are called milk teeth. That's 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. And they're called milk teeth because do you know what children should be eating then? Milk. It's at the milk teeth stage, which starts about 7.5, 8, 9, 10 months of age. That's when you give baby taste. I used to give my babies a celery stick to suck on. A very hard prune that they'll suck on for a while. A hunk of apple, maybe in a net bag. A carrot, just little taste. That's all they should be getting. Because at the milk teeth stage, their main food should be milk. Then at about anywhere from 14 to 20 months of age, the next teeth appear, and they are the molars. They come through about here, and they're the grinders. When the molars come through, then an enzyme is released in the mouth. It is an amylase. It's called ptyalin. And ptyalin is the enzyme that breaks down starch. But do you know what this means? No baby has the ability to break up starch until the ptyalin is released. And the ptyalins are released when the molars are fully through. And what are mothers told to feed their babies between 4 and 6 months of age? Rice cereal, Farax, pure starch. Recently, it was only about a week ago, I always look at babies, how I love babies, and there was this little baby just sitting at about 10 months of age with a bread roll. Whoa. And what would happen if I would try and tell that lady? She would say, how dare you tell me what to feed my baby? I have to wait till they come to me. That's why this information is so important. We've got to stop this gluten intolerance epidemic. And it's happening because babies are being fed too young. Strange things are happening today. Did you know that adults are drinking milk and babies are eating food? Strange. People say, what milk do you drink? I say, I'm weaned. I eat food. Milk's for babies. Where do most people drink milk? In their coffee and in their tea and in their cereal. I don't eat cereal. I don't drink tea or coffee, so I have no need of milk. No wonder we have a gluten intolerant epidemic. It's the hybridized wheat. It's the way the wheat is grown with all of its superphosphates, so we're losing the minerals in the soil. So we're not getting the minerals in the wheat, so it can't be digested properly. Babies are being fed far too young. And it's the hybridized wheat. Almonds and Brazil nuts are the two alkaline nuts. Almonds called the king of all nuts. It deserves the title because almonds are alkaline. Almonds are very high in protein, very high in iron, very high in calcium. They are the king. Brazil nuts are a very important nut too because Brazil nuts are phenomenally high in selenium, very important mineral, especially for the thyroid gland. You see, the thyroid gland needs selenium to convert iodine into thyroxine. And mercury fillings have an affinity for selenium. Most people with mercury fillings in their mouth are low in selenium. So you can get someone developing a thyroid problem because of the mercury fillings in their mouth. We only need 5 Brazil nuts a day to get all the selenium that we need. Selenium in Brazil nuts is about 10 times higher than any other food. Soy, lima, and lentil are the 3 alkaline legumes. Yesterday we looked at soy and I showed you how soy is only a problem if it's been genetically modified and it hasn't been organically grown. All your seeds have an alkaline effect. The most acid-forming substance that can go into your body is the pure crystallized acid that's been extracted from the sugarcane plant. The hybridized wheat the hybridization of wheat has also created a wheat that has a very acid effect on the body. Meat. In his book China Study, Dr. Colin Campbell, he shows very clearly how the high acid effect of meat on the human body is feeding cancer. Alcohol is not a food, but it creates a very acid effect in the body. Aged cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? It is mould. And mould is very acid, loves acid environment, creates an acid environment. All aged cheeses get their flavour from mould. So I'll make a distinction here. We'll put a pH here of 7. And they're your fresh cheeses like feta, cottage. And you can get some quite nice goat and sheep fetas now. I don't usually eat feta, but if I travel and there's not much available, I might eat a little feta. Tobacco's not a food, but it creates a very acid condition in the body. All your other grains, other than the millet, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, spelt, and kamut. All your other legumes, other than lima, soy, and lentil. And all your other nuts, other than the Brazil and the almond, have an acid effect on the body. To maintain this cellular pH of 6.5, we should be consuming 20 to 30% acid-forming foods and approximately 70 to 80% alkaline-forming foods. That ratio will maintain the 6.5 pH. And this 20 to 30% ideally is from this section here. What would most Aussies be? 90? 10? I don't know about you, but I've met some sick vegetarians. And I find they're living over here, but they're particularly living here. This is the cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea. Balance is of the essence. The body runs according to precision balance. One of the easiest ways to maintain this balance is to eat more vegetables, more dark green leafy vegetables. Start exploring the other grains. One lady said, "Oh no, I love walnuts and they're on the acid side." I said, "That's fine. You need a little acid. It's only when this is overdone that the problem arises. We need a balance." When we run our 2-day juice program at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we give 100% alkaline. And on the first day that the guests eat, which is Wednesday, it's mostly an alkaline diet. Because they're detoxing, we're still getting a lot of acid coming out of the body. So it's all a matter of balance. And if you deep fry potatoes, you can bring them over to the acid side. And if you culture the grains in the sourdough method, it can come a little more alkaline. And if you sprout your legumes, you certainly can bring them to the alkaline side. Be very cautious of sprouts though, because many sprouts, being moist all the time, can grow mold. But when you sprout your grains, you actually bring them back to a plant, so you do lessen the protein level. For instance, 1 cup of lentils gives you about 15 grams of protein. 1 cup of lentil sprouts will give you 6.5 grams of protein. So you're bringing it back to a plant. One lady said, "Oh, what about rice? I love rice." Rice is a good grain, but it can be overdone. So it's all a matter of balance. Again, targeting your dark green leafies and your vegetables and your different grains will help you to maintain the balance. Just as the gardener plays with the pH of the soil, you can play with the pH of your cell to create sickness or to create health. So the knowledge of the alkaline forming vegetables, the alkaline forming grains, allows everyone to start implementing more of those into their lifestyle and lessening this. Let's go over to our carbohydrate list and see how many of them are from the acid side. Pasta, bread, cereal, pie, pizza, rice, sugar, and if you deep fry the potatoes, they can come over too. The sick vegetarians that I have met are the vegetarians that basically are living over on the carbohydrate section. Mind you, I've met some very healthy vegetarians, and I'm a vegetarian. I think it is a superior diet, but it needs to be done right. Most vegetarians that I meet are protein deficient. When you stop the meat, you must replace with a vegetarian protein, which is your legumes over here and over here. And again, keeping the balance. If you have chickpeas and walnuts, you can balance that out with a great big green leafy salad and a vegetable stir fry. You see that? So again, it's maintaining the balance. We have a cream that we give our guests to have on their millet on the first day. It's called Brazil nut cream. It's 1 cup of Brazil nuts blended to a powder, and then you pour 1 whole tin of pears in their natural juice, and then you blend that again till it's a cream. And so, as you can see by my description, this Brazil nut cream is a lovely alkaline cream that the guests very much enjoy having on their millet. You can get breads made out of spelt and kamut. You can also get breads made out of millet. So there's a variety of breads that you can get with this. There are a lot of products coming on now because of the gluten intolerant epidemic. So you can get a lot of different breads, biscuits, you can get pastas, all made out of these other grains. You really just have to read your labels to get them. One old saying is that every person has their own doctor inside of them. And having the information on how you can play with the pH of the cellular level, bringing about a healing condition in the body, is important information. Also, the 8 laws of health. When we're breathing in stale air, mouldy air, bad air, it creates an acid condition. So very important to check the air in your home. Get those windows wide open. If you have carpet, make sure it's regularly vacuumed. And there's a great little tip for cleaning up an old carpet, if you're unable to pull it up, is to sprinkle sodium bicarbonate all over it. You leave it there for a couple of hours, dry, and then come and vacuum it up. The sodium bicarbonate, because it's so alkaline, it kills off any anaerobic organisms, which your fungus and your mold are. Earlier in the week, I talked about Dr. Tullio Simoncini, who's injecting sodium bicarb straight into cancer cells. That wave of alkalinity just wipes them out. So sodium bicarbonate, it alkalizes. Some people say, well, can I drink it? All it will do is alkalize your pH of your stomach, and you want that to be acid. The only time I might advise drinking sodium bicarbonate might be if someone has stomach cancer. They may try that. So make sure your air in your home is pure and it is clean. Sunshine alkalizes. If you stay in the sun until your skin gets burnt, that can create an acid condition, but just the right amount of sunshine alkalizes. Yesterday we looked at the things that can cause a very acid condition in your body, referring to the stimulants. So this is alcohol, caffeine, and caffeine got forgotten here. Sorry about that. Caffeine is another one. Caffeine foods and caffeine drinks all create a very acid condition in the body. And many people use caffeine to give themselves a hit, especially combining it with the sugar. But as I showed you in the last lecture, it gives an initial high, but then it creates a dump. And the effect of caffeine and sugar can be seen as where Coca-Cola sits. We had a man quite high up in the Bundaberg Sugar Company do our program, and he said 15 teaspoons of sugar in 1 can of Coke. That's a very acid environment. So make sure that you're going to bed nice and early and getting well hydrated and well nourishment, then you will not have to resort to the stimulants. And temperance means not taking anything into the body that will harm it and taking in moderation the good things. When you're eating nourishing food, highly alkalizing, fresh air, going to bed early, which alkalizes, exercising every day creates an alkaline environment, eating a proper diet, which I've given you an illustration of here, being well hydrated and having peace in your heart. I found peace when I gave my heart to God at the age of 25. We need peace. A lot of people don't have peace in their hearts today. They all create an acid condition. But when you begin implementing these things, combining the 8 laws of health with this more alkaline diet, you will not need coffee. You will not need those artificial stimulants. One lady said to me, coffee just gets me up and going in the morning. My next question is, why do you need to get up and going? Why do you need something to get you up and going? Is it because you've gone to bed too late? Is it because you're dehydrated? Is it because of those moldy pillows? Is it because your bedroom carpet hasn't been vacuumed for a while? Can you see why the detective hat has to be on? We all need to be private investigators finding out why these things are so. What's the use of resorting to caffeine when the moldy pillows remain? What's the use of resorting to caffeine to get that hit when it will not give you a high that will last? It's a delusive high, it's a transitory high. It is very brief, and the height that it takes you, the low that it produces is lower than the high that it takes you. So implementing these 8 laws of health, implementing a diet that is high in alkaline forming foods and low in the acid forming foods, ideally eliminating this top list so we only have approximately 20 to 30% of the acid forming foods. That's just like the gardener playing with the soil to get different coloured flowers out of his hydrangea plants. You can actually play with the pH of your soil by implementing all of these and get fine health, proper health. What's proper health? Energy. Eyes that see, ears that hear, sleeping well, digestion's well. You can still climb mountains with your grandchild at the age of 70. Isn't that what everyone wants? And it is within the reach of every human being. That's the good news.